Hello, my name is Reverend Dr. May Elise Cannon. It's been 661 days of ethnic cleansing and what is undeniably a genocide in Gaza. Today is July 28th, 2025. There still remain more than 20, we believe, hostages alive that should be released and returned to their families. Peace is nowhere to be seen on the horizon. An update of the last 24 hours. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu and the Israeli military yesterday announced that Israel would suspend its armed activity. So there was a humanitarian pause. You probably heard about this. A lot of people I know who are not directly engaged thought this was a great thing, 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. or until further notice, in order to allow minimal humanitarian supply to be allowed in. That's a direct quote. So there was a humanitarian pause to distribute aid because people are starving in Gaza. The Israeli military, said the safe routes for aid convoys would be opened. The UN Undersecretary General for Humanitarian Affairs, Tom Fletcher, confirmed that over 100 truckloads of aid were delivered to Gaza. The amount of aid that was used every day was more than 500 trucks a day, 5 days a week before October of 2023. And we're celebrating 100 truckloads getting into Gaza, not even necessarily being distributed with a starving population. What absurdity. The Israeli Air Force resumed airdrops of aid. We'll talk more about that in the days ahead. It is one of the most ineffective ways of distributing aid. Jordan and the UAE parachuted 25 tons of aid into Gaza yesterday, it was reported. Now, despite that effort of distributing aid, the humanitarian ceasefire, attacks continued across the Gaza Strip and casualties continued to rise. 3 areas that were announced to have, quote, tactical suspicion. This is the humanitarian ceasefire, everyone, as well as the Israeli designated safe zones in Gaza City were all attacked by airstrikes. This was reported in the Middle East Eye, and Al Jazeera reported an updated account of numbers revealed that as Israel's tactical pause came to an end, guess how many people were killed during the day where there was a humanitarian pause in the Gaza Strip? 63 while they were seeking aid. What kind of humanitarian pause is that? What utter nonsense. Israeli soldiers killed 12 Palestinians and injured more than 100 as they sought to collect food from a distribution point in central Gaza yesterday. This was according to Al Awada Hospital. It's unclear whether or not the incident occurred before Israel's tactical pause. The IDF said that their troops fired warning shots, that they were not aware of any casualties. The malnutrition in Gaza has reached alarming levels in July, with rates on the dangerous territory amid an entirely preventable crisis. That was the World Health Organization saying yesterday. Netanyahu reasserted his claim there is no policy of starvation in Gaza. At least President Trump acknowledged today there is starvation happening in Gaza. But Netanyahu said there's no policy of starvation and there is no starvation in the Strip. According to the health ministry in Gaza, 14 people have died from malnourishment in the last 24 hours. The IRC, International Rescue Committee's senior vice president of international programs, named Donnelly yesterday, described the focus of airdrops into Gaza as a grotesque distraction, saying the airdrops would, quote, never deliver the volume or the quality of aid needed. I gave as much of that update in the last couple of days as well. BBC found evidence that aid had fallen into areas that Israel has declared a dangerous combat zone. So let me tell you what's happening. Aid is being dropped from the air. It's being dropped into combat zones where if Palestinians try to get it, they will be shot and killed. And by the way, the Israeli IDF will say we didn't know anyone was killed. Hamas's Qatar-based lead negotiator, Al-Hayya, yesterday blamed Israel and the U.S. for stalling ceasefire talks, saying Hamas has demonstrated every possible flexibility and that the starvation crisis in the territory meant there is no point in continuing negotiations at present. Now, Europe and France are calling for the disarmament of Hamas. They also have said, France, that they will declare and acknowledge the Palestinian state, I believe, coming in September. There'll be more about that in days ahead. An Israeli airstrike hit a residential apartment in West Gaza City yesterday during the humanitarian pause. 2 people were killed in that attack. And the Israeli Navy this weekend, I talked about this some, intercepted a Freedom Flotilla coalition ship. It was aimed to bring aid to Gaza to call international attention to the crisis. Israeli officials and pro-Palestinian activists reported about that. Dozens of ministers are set to gather at the UN. That started today. The 29th, 30th, it might have even started yesterday, but in New York is this delayed conference that was supposed to be June 17th to 19th. That's co-convened by Saudi Arabia and France. The focus is about a two-state solution between Israel and Palestine. Both the US and Israel are boycotting that event at the UN. Last night in the occupied West Bank, the only Christian village in the region, Taipei. We've been talking about them a lot. This Christian village, Taipei, a CMEP put out a statement about the attacks against Taipei more than a week ago. An Israeli settler organization called Hilltop Youth attacked Taipei again. The group was led by extremist figures such as Naria Ben Pazi. This attack enabled members of the group to throw stones at homes, write threatening messages on the walls, to set fire to 3 cars. While this group has previously been focused on targeting livestock, their violence now has included and escalated to people. The Israeli military has said they never found proof that Hamas systematically stole aid from the UN UNRWA distribution sites. This is according to 2 senior Israeli military officials and 2 other additional Israeli sources. The UN aid delivery mechanisms were largely effective in providing food to Gaza's population. This is according to the Israeli military. Now, the reason the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation was created, the reason it's been militarized, the whole reason is because they're saying there's no way to safely deliver aid without it benefiting Hamas. And the Israeli security establishment, the Israeli military is saying that Hamas never systematically stole aid. The UN aid delivery mechanisms were largely effective. For the past 2 years, the Israeli government has relied on Hamas's alleged aid theft as the main rationale for restricting food from entering into Gaza. In other words, this man-made famine is based on a lie. That's what that means. The claim was echoed by President Trump as recently as yesterday. Now, this news follows Friday's report that an internal U.S. government review found no evidence of widespread theft by Hamas of U.S.-funded aid. In the United States, President Trump said on Friday he believes that Israel should fight and clean up and finish the job to get rid of Hamas. That is almost a carte blanche permission for Netanyahu and the Israelis to attack and kill more civilians. Yesterday, Trump also said that Washington would provide more humanitarian aid to Gaza, but wanted other countries to participate as well. Separately, Rubio, Secretary of State, told a group of hostage families on Friday that the U.S. needs to do some serious rethinking of its Gaza strategy. How about we hold the Israeli government accountable for the man-made famine that has begun and been perpetuated in Gaza? Call for the de-escalation and the laying down of arms of Hamas. Yes, and of the Israeli military. Fine. Demand that we will not continue to sell U.S. weapons to Israel while they're being used on the civilian population. That's what we've been calling for. Finally, I just would ask for your prayers, your prayers, your prayers. There's a very significant gathering of Christian leaders happening the next 2 days. I hope to be able to talk to you more about that in the days ahead, but we would covet your prayers. Covet your prayers that we would have strategic conversations that can help coordinate to be able to make a difference. Pray that there might be a breakthrough, a tipping point, that the famine in Gaza, the humanitarian crisis there would be brought to an end, that the attacks on the civilian population would be brought to an end, that hostages and prisoners that are held unjustly could be released, that peace would be near on the horizon. Might peace come quickly. In the name of Christ. Amen.